Hey everyone, and welcome to the next session. And the title for the talk for this session is A Case for Micro Interaction and Animations in Mobile Apps with React Native. So let's get started. My name is Akshat Paul. I'm an author and a developer. I've been in this field of software development for almost 12 years, working on all kind of application, web apps, mobile apps, DevOps sometimes. I also have a fancy pen designation at my place of work, which is digital expert at McKinsey and Company. To connect with me, you can always follow me or just DM me. My DMs are always open on Twitter at Paul Akshat. And the best way to connect with me if you want to discuss any new application you want to build, or you're just stuck on React or React Native and few other technologies I have worked on, is the best way to contact me is through www.akshatpaul.com. That is where you can easily find me. And what are my upcoming plans, what's my next talk, or what I'm writing. You can find all the details there. So do visit and do connect with me. So a few of the books that I've been part of over the years, the most recent one, React Native for Mobile Development, in order to build stunning mobile applications using React Native, and few of the book as a technical reviewer on various topics that I have worked on over the years as a software developer. So let's get started with today's agenda. So our agenda is divided in four parts. Micro interactions. First, we'll know what are micro interactions, how micro interactions and animations are connected with each other. How can we build micro interactions with React Native? Essentially, in mobile apps, how can we include micro interactions? And that will be through a demo, because I believe no technical talk can be completed without a demo. So I'll show you a quick application how you can build it, and my target is that by end of this talk you should be able to build small micro interactions in maybe a not so intuitive application, if you have built any, and include them and build a better connection with your users, and you'll see how important they are. Many of you might be actually using them already, but you'll get to know the structure and the funda behind micro interactions. Lastly, what are the popular libraries, especially related to React Native, which you can use in your applications to make things easier and implement these animation and micro interactions in a much faster way. So let's get started with part one of our talk, which is what are micro interactions. Before we get into the official a definition of micro interactions, let's look at a quote which is one of my favorite quote on this topic of micro interactions, by Victor Papanek, who is a Austrian born American designer and educator, a very prominent person in the world of design, who has a book called Design for the Real World. You can check it out, and it's not just limited to software, but actually design principles in general. So it says nothing big works, and that's exactly in long story short definition of micro interaction. But we do have a longer way to describe what are micro interactions. Micro interactions are small moments where the user and the design interact. When they are well designed, micro interactions enhance the user experience with the design, and when they are poorly designed, they totally damage the experience. And we all are, I think I mentioned it once before, that we are surrounded by micro interactions all the time, and we'll get to see in both real world and in the software world, in our virtual world, and we'll get to see examples how when implemented correctly they are a delight to the customer, to the end user, and if they are terribly implemented, they really become a problem to use our product or our service, or our software. So let's look at two examples of micro interactions in real world. So as you can see on this slide, we have two examples. One is a toaster and another one is an egg timer. The toaster here, the micro interaction here is that once the toast are toasted, once a bread is toasted, they pop up and sends a signal, which is a kind of a trigger to the user that the toasts are ready. The second one is an egg timer that it pings to let you know that your eggs are cooked to perfection. Uh, though these are very simple tasks and we think that they come by default, but these are those small micro interaction, and they actually have a proper steps to be followed in order to make them successful. So let's look at these four steps of micro interaction. First being trigger, second rules, next is feedback, and then loops and modes. Let's understand them one by one. The first one is a trigger. A trigger, or the first step, is when we initiate the micro interaction. For example, if we take an example of washing a hand while interacting with a sensor tap, which automatically pours water. In that case, when you want to wash your hand, then you'll wave your hand in front of the sensor. That will be called as a trigger point. It starts our interaction. The second step are the rules, like what has to happen when something gets triggered. Example, when we put our hand in front of the sensor recognizes that there is a hand or there is a movement or something like that. The third step is feedback, which is the verification of a micro interaction. Once the verification is accepted by the sensor and passed to respective controller, the tap starts running, and then we can wash our hands. The final step is the loops or modes, which determines whether the micro interaction has to continue or it has to stop. Example, if we look at our example, going back to our example of a toaster, we would not expect a toaster once the bread is toasted, it should keep popping, because it would spoil the warmness or the freshness of the toast. While a common micro interaction in refrigerators is that if it's open, the refrigerator door is open for too long, it starts to beep, and it will continue to beep till the time user intervenes and closes the door. So the final part, which is loops or modes, where loops is continuation of the rule, and mode is that it stops, just giving a signal, just providing the information to the end user, and it stops. However, micro interactions are not just limited to system. They are also user generated, and at some time they are system generated. So let's look at the methodology of micro interactions. So let's look at the methodology behind a micro interactions. A micro interaction can be triggered either by a user or by a system. By a user, I mean via a button or performing some gesture or some voice command. Micro interaction are also triggered by system when the system meets certain criteria, certain predetermined conditions. After the micro interaction has been triggered, it provides some sort of a feedback to the user. This means that micro interactions can be local, and as the name implies, they are pretty small in terms of the larger user interface. But despite being small, micro interactions are very important because they smoothen the user's path through the design, making each step easier in order to use whether your device or your software or your application. Let's now look at how we achieve it in the world of software with animations. So now we come to the next part of our talk, which is animation. So animations and micro interactions are quite closely related to each other, and it is one of the most common ways to implement micro interaction for any application, web application, mobile application. We'll see a lot of examples related to mobile apps. However, animation is not micro interactions are not just limited to animations. Even sound and a vibration of the phone when you receive a message is also a kind of micro interaction. However, animation is still part of it. Like if you get a message, you get a phone vibration and a ding sound, yet there is some kind of a animation which appears, a pop-up of the notification or something like that. But animation is a very integral part, especially in mobile apps, in order to implement micro interactions. And these are very small interactions, but are a delight to the user, and somebody has programmed it. So as developers, we have to program these tits and bits here and there in order to improve the experience of our end users. So let's look at few of the examples. Very often in various mobile apps we interact with every day. Though there are quite a lot of such interactions and animation, especially in mobile apps, but I won't go through all of them, just few very, very commonly used. The first one you see here is pull to refresh for reloading a page. It's a very common interaction we see in most of the smart devices, especially iOS based applications, where we pull our page in order to refresh it, and in order to know that the refresh is happening or it is success, we see that rubber band effect. And once we we leave it, it goes back up and a loading spinner comes in. So this whole interaction helps us understand that something is happening while the page gets reloaded. It's not just a simple update on the address bar, especially in this case of Safari, where even the loading bar is getting updated. The main interaction here is when we pull, we relieve it. The rubber band effect comes, and there is that loading icon. Let's look at the next one. Here is a very popular animation or a micro interaction of Siri or even Google Assistant in case of Android phone. Both works in pretty much the same way, and the way it interacts with user is that user say, "Hey Siri," and you see this animation of Siri which pops up on your screen, and which means that it's hearing you, and when you start speaking again, there are these waves form which comes on this ball, which further says that it is listening to our instructions, and then of course at the end there is the final animation where it starts working its magic, that it's computing something or it's processing something. So all these steps, these three steps, when we say "Hey Siri," and the Siri ball appears, and then there are those waves that it's listening to you and then processing. These are those three small independent micro interactions, but collectively they help the user to stay with the application, stay with the service till the time its instruction gets concluded. Let's look at another example. So one of the most common feature for any application is loading. While loading a specific feature or the whole page, or a specific component, and it is painful. But it is a kind of a necessary evil. However, micro interaction can make it more engaging process for the user. Like we see here, we click on a button and there is some request which happens in the background with our server, and of course meanwhile the user sees some kind of animations and passes their time. So since most of the loading part is related to some kind of a activity or a function which is getting executed, specifically if you are making multiple requests, and the loading time, if it is slightly longer, a micro interaction is a great opportunity to entertain our user in the meantime, so that they do not lose interest in our application while they're working on it, and continues moves on to the next step. Similar to loading, downloading is another action which takes considerable amount of time at times, and thanks to the world of instant gratification and short videos, the attention span of the user and patience is quite low. So micro interaction again is a great opportunity to hold the attention of our user with some kind of an animation, that something is happening for them. Even a messaging, while something is getting downloaded and keeps entertaining the user. But especially in case of mobile apps, we can split it into multiple animations, so that we can catch the attention of our user while the program gets while the downloading gets completed. Let's look at one more example. So here we have an example of hovering, and especially in social media like Facebook, where if you want to put a reaction on any post, there are multiple options, and they all are animated icons. The reason being, is that you're not just scrolling through Facebook newsfeed, and by mistake you liked something. You don't even know what you liked. You're not going to go to your some activity log to check what all things you liked or did not like. With this micro interaction, what Facebook is doing is that you are actually looking at the animated icons, what they mean. They also have a meaning just above that, whether angry or whether you're laughing or whether you love it or whether you like it, and then you select it, so that it's a conscious decision which the user is taking. And it adds value of liking or ignoring or being angry on some specific post. Of course, there are a lot more such animations, such as switching and toggling, swiping up in application, notifications. One of the most common type of micro interaction, and pretty much in all social media applications we have notifications. Then there is call to action. So there are a lot of such small micro interactions which grabs the attention of the user, and some and many a times its purpose is that the user sticks to the application, or if there is some kind of a longer process or a painful process, it makes easier for the user by breaking into various steps, showing them an animation, and they proceed to the next to the journey of the application. Let's look at the third part of our presentation, which is micro interaction in mobile with React Native. So, since I'm sure most of you know what is React Native, since we are sitting in React JS case study festival, but still, if any of you have no idea what React Native is, React Native is an open source mobile application framework. It is used to develop applications primarily for Android and iOS based devices. Of course, there is support for Windows and other form factors too, like tvOS, etc. By helping developers to use React framework along with native platform capabilities. I don't have to say a lot about React Native. It's pretty much a popular and a go-to application framework to build mobile apps, especially for React developers. If you know React, it's quite easy to build applications in React Native, and its community support, the amount of libraries which are now available is just tremendous. And in last few years, it has really become very stable, and developing the developer experience on React Native, the whole ecosystem, using various tools like Expo, etc. It really makes development fast and fun, and the time to market and the quality of app is really high. So let's get started with our demo. And I'll create a very simple micro interaction using React Native and Expo. So let's get started. Let me open the code. Also, let me start this application. I've created a basic skeleton of this application. It's like a standard login page, which I have created, whereby we'll on a login page, a kind of micro interaction which we can create, and we'll create it together in this demo. So let me open the basic application on the simulator. Cool. So imagine if Geekle has its conference application, and this is the login page. Of course, nothing works here. So what should happen when we click on sign in? It can be a simple sign in, and the form appears. But we can put in some animation and make the sign in username, password appear, disappear, something like that. So I've created this a simple React Native project with this background of a Geekle logo and a sign in button and a fake sign in with Facebook button. So if I click on it, basically nothing happens. So now in this example, let's add a username and a password here somewhere, and of course a sign in button, and it appears from appears from the background. It feels like it is appearing from the background, as this as this background image move upward. So let's start building that. So for this demo, I'm using React Native Gesture Handle and React Native Reanimated, two popular libraries used for animations and gestures with React Native. So let's get back to our code, and we'll be placing another animated view here, and with two text inputs, so that once the background moves up and the original button disappears, the new button must appear in this micro interaction. So let's get started. Let's first add our new animated view right below this one. We have divided its height by 3, so that this screen is divided into 3 equal parts. But what we want is our text inputs to be at absolute position. So let's add our text inputs. One is for email, and one is for password. We can see this slightly because it's in black color. We can see it appearing here. So let's add some styles for this text input. Let's go to our styles section and add some styles to it. So what we have added is basically height of 50, border radius of 25, border width of 5, margin horizontal of 20, some padding and some color. If we see now, we can see these buttons appearing, but we see these text inputs appearing. So but we also require a sign in button below, a new sign in button once the email and password is punched. So let's add one more animated view, which is basically our sign in button. And let's see, now we can see all our 3 things required once the background goes up, and these will appear for user, but we don't want them to be right in front of us at this moment. So let's give it a z index of -1, so that we don't see it right away. So now you can see it has gone behind, but we actually don't want to see it at all. So we should also add opacity. So now we don't see it anywhere. Next, let's add values instead of hard-coded z index and opacity. Let's actually pass animated values. So let's change our z index to this dot text input z index, and for opacity we have this dot text input opacity. We also have here a transform, so that when we slide in our new animated view, we do it with we replace translate y to this dot text input y. So next step, let's create these three values in our constructor. So let's first add in our constructor the text input z index from 0 to 1. When the button opacity is 0, we want the z index to be 1, and when the button is visible, we want the index to be -1. Next, let's add text input y such that in the interpolate, when the button opacity is 0, we want it to be seen. Else, we want the current position, we want it to be moved by 100. Lastly, we have our text input opacity, where when it's 0, we want it to be 1, and when it's 1, we want it to be 0. Let's save this. Look at reload our application. Let's click on sign in now, and as you see, it slides in smoothly. So let's retry it one more time. Let's try it. Super. So this is one of the most easiest micro interaction example, in which once the user clicks on a sign in for the login page, the form to enter email and password elegantly slides in with this simple interaction. Now that we are back from our demo, you can actually use this demo application and build upon this, or look at this code. I'll be sharing the GitHub repository for the same. Next, let's look at the last part of our presentation, which is popular animation libraries for React Native. The first one is React Native Reanimated. React Native has a built-in animated API, and it is written from scratch by React Native Reanimated library to provide flexibility for gesture-based interaction, along with creating animation in the apps. The React Native API has some limitation in terms of gesture-based interaction, and this library tends to solve it. It has full native support and performs animation directly on the native thread instead of JavaScript thread. That is an added advantage. The library is actively maintained by developers at by the core contributors and developers at even Expo. So it's a pretty robust library to be used. Let's move to the next one. Next, we have a React Native Animatable. It's one of the most popular animation gesture library with 8.7 thousand stars on GitHub at the time of making this talk. It has vast set of properties for declarative usage for animation, looping, generic transitions, and a lot more. 60 plus built-in animation. So it's pretty much plug and play with this library. The next one is React Native Shared Element, which provides some set of native building blocks for performing shared element transition. This library tend to solve a set of specific problem through its native implementation approach. Few of those are CPU and GPU interface, no flickering, scroll view clipping, shadow transition, crossfade transition, and a lot more. It also provides a shared element stack navigator, which is similar to Stack Navigator, which you can use to wrap each route when you are building your animations, your transitions. Let's move to the next one. Another one which is a very powerful library is React Spring, because it's a physics-based animation, and a lot of time we do require some physics-based animations to be part of our micro interaction. It's one example is if you are showing a download button, and if the user moves the device, we can actually show, the download wave animation is also moving along with it, and it gives a more realistic feel to the application. It has APIs available in the form of plug and play React hooks, and most of these hooks are can be implemented very easily in a 3-step process. Cool. So now we are end of our agenda. We have completed all 4 sections of our talk. But I thought I'll also delight my audience today by adding one additional part to my talk, which is quick tips of which you can use, which I have been following for some time. So the final one last thing in this talk is quick tips on micro interactions. Uh, so I have split it up into 5 parts, which is purpose, structure, simplicity, life, and retirement, experiment, and test. So, what is the purpose? The first thing first, micro interactions must have a purpose. They are supposed to encourage user to interact with certain part of your application. So make sure they are functional and they have a purpose to work on. The second is follow the structure. When it comes to micro interaction, we know the 4-part process of trigger, rule, feedback, loops, and mode. Follow the process. It will make a great interaction for your application. Keep it simple. Simplicity is the key. There's a reason micro interaction is called micro interaction for a reason. They must be short and sweet. Micro interaction are there to improve your design, make things look clean and feel clean. So keep them simple. Don't add like too many animations and too many gestures, which makes the user actually irritated. So just keep it simple and clean. Think about life and retirement of your micro interaction. So micro interaction must have a feel of natural thing to the user. They most of the time they shouldn't even notice it, and if they are noticing it, it is because of a pleasant experience which they carry while using the application, not because they are fed up of the application. So make sure you build an interaction which is kind of timeless and stays with your application for a long time. And lastly, experiment and test. Anything which goes out in production in public it must be tested and improved upon. So there should be some ways to gather feedback, analytics, experiment, fail fast, move to a new micro interaction, or improve the existing one. So that's about the 5 quick tips without taking any more time. I would say that's a wrap, folks. Thank you so much for attending my talk, and thank you so much for Geekle and conference organizer for organizing this conference. Last 1 year has been tough for all of us, but I think our energy in building, creating such conferences and connecting with each other virtually, and especially all the audience attending the conference. I'm really really thankful of you. Do stay in touch over Twitter with Paul Akshit. Since we all are virtual, we don't get an opportunity to network how we used to do during live conferences. But dude, stay in touch via Twitter or via my website akshaypaul.com. Happy to work with you on any problem you are stuck on. I'm always happy to solve interesting problems. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much, everyone.